The howl pierced the night air, sending shivers down my spine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I stood on the deserted street corner. The flickering streetlight above cast eerie shadows, and a gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of something feral. I'm Edward, and I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. But here I am, recounting the most terrifying night of my life. A night that turned my world upside down and made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. It was just past midnight when I left the office. As a 44-year-old accountant, late nights weren't uncommon, especially during tax season. But this night was different. The moment I stepped out of the building, I felt it. An oppressive atmosphere that seemed to press down on me from all sides. The streets of Lansing were unnaturally quiet. No cars, no pedestrians, not even the usual stray cats that roamed the area. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I quickened my pace, keys clutched tightly in my hand. The parking garage was only 2 blocks away, but suddenly it felt like miles. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. My blood ran cold. I spun around, searching for the source of the sound, but the shadows seemed to shift and move, playing tricks on my eyes. Was that movement in the alley, or just my imagination? I broke into a run, my dress shoes clacking loudly on the pavement. The sound echoed off the buildings, amplifying my fear. I could hear something behind me now, the padding of heavy paws, the scrape of claws on concrete. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. There, illuminated by the pale moonlight, was a creature straight out of my worst nightmares. It was massive, easily 7 feet tall when standing on its hind legs. Thick, matted fur covered its muscular body, and its eyes glowed an unnatural yellow in the darkness. A werewolf. It was impossible, and yet there it was, very real and very deadly. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, my lungs burning as I gasped for air. The parking garage was just ahead. If I could make it to my car, maybe I'd have a chance. But fate had other plans. As I rounded the corner, I collided with something solid. I stumbled back, disoriented, only to find myself face to face with a young woman. She looked as terrified as I felt. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her along with me. "There's something—" My words were cut off by an ear-splitting roar. The werewolf had caught up to us, its massive form blocking the entrance to the parking garage. Saliva dripped from its razor-sharp fangs, and its eyes were fixed on us with predatory intensity. We backed away slowly, the woman whimpering beside me. I searched desperately for an escape route, but we were trapped between the beast and the solid brick wall of a nearby building. In that moment, I thought of my family, my wife and 2 children, sleeping peacefully at home, unaware of the horror unfolding in downtown Lansing. Would I ever see them again? The werewolf lunged, and I instinctively pushed the woman aside, taking the brunt of the attack. Searing pain exploded across my chest as its claws raked through my shirt and into my flesh. The force of the impact sent me sprawling to the ground. I could hear the woman screaming, her footsteps retreating as she fled. Part of me was relieved she had a chance to escape, but the selfish part of me wished she had stayed to help. The werewolf loomed over me, its hot breath washing over my face. I closed my eyes, waiting for the killing blow, but it never came. Instead, a new sound filled the air. Sirens. The creature's head snapped up, its ears twitching. For a moment, it seemed torn between finishing me off and fleeing. Then, with a final, menacing growl, it bounded away into the shadows. I lay there, bleeding and in shock, as police cars screeched to a halt nearby. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, but the werewolf was long gone. As paramedics tended to my wounds, I tried to explain what had happened, but the words sounded crazy even to my own ears. A werewolf in Lansing? They must have thought I was delirious from blood loss. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a night that would push me to the very limits of fear and survival. The hospital was a flurry of activity when I arrived. Doctors and nurses rushed about, their faces grim as they wheeled in more victims. It seemed I wasn't the only one who had encountered something terrifying that night. As they stitched up my wounds, I overheard snippets of conversation. Reports of a large animal attacking people throughout the city. But I knew it was no ordinary animal. The image of that werewolf was seared into my mind, its yellow eyes haunting me, even in the bright fluorescent lights of the emergency room. I must have passed out at some point, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed. The room was dark, lit only by the soft glow of monitors. For a moment, I thought I was safe. Then I saw it, a massive silhouette framed in the window. My heart nearly stopped as I recognized the pointed ears, the hunched shoulders. The werewolf had found me. I fumbled for the call button, but before I could press it, the creature smashed through the window in a shower of glass. Its claws tore into the mattress, narrowly missing me as I rolled off the bed and onto the floor. Tangled in 4 lines and weakened from my injuries, I crawled desperately toward the door. The werewolf snarled, saliva dripping onto my hospital gown as it stalked closer. Just as its jaws were about to close around my leg, the door burst open. A security guard rushed in, his gun drawn. He fired 2 shots, the muzzle flashes briefly illuminating the room. The werewolf roared in pain and anger. It turned its attention to the guard, giving me a chance to scramble to my feet. I watched in horror as the creature lifted the man off the ground with one massive paw, then tossed him across the room like a rag doll. I ran, ignoring the pain that shot through my body with every step. Behind me, I could hear the sickening sounds of the werewolf tearing into the guard. Guilt and nausea washed over me, but survival instinct pushed me forward. The hospital corridors were a maze of terror. Emergency lights flashed, and distant screams echoed through the building. It seemed the werewolf hadn't come alone. The entire hospital was under attack. I stumbled into a stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time as I descended. My bare feet slapped against the cold concrete, and my breath came in ragged gasps. How many floors had I gone down? How much further to safety? As I rounded a corner, I collided with someone coming up the stairs. We both cried out in surprise and fear. It was a nurse, her scrubs splattered with blood. "You can't go down there," she said, her voice shaking. "They're everywhere. We have to go up to the roof. A helicopter is coming." Together we turned and began climbing. Every floor we passed, we could hear chaos. Screams, growls, the sound of medical equipment being smashed. The werewolves were systematically working their way through the hospital, leaving no one untouched. We burst through the door to the roof, gasping for air. A group of survivors huddled near the helipad. Doctors, patients, visitors. Their faces were pale with shock and fear. "How many are there?" I asked the nurse as we joined the group. "At least 3, she replied, her eyes wide. "Maybe more. I've never seen anything like it. They're not just killing, they're changing people." A chill ran down my spine. Changing people? Did that mean... My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of rotors. A spotlight swept across the roof as a police helicopter approached. For a moment, hope surged through me. We were going to be rescued. But then a howl cut through the night, louder than the helicopter's engines. The roof access door exploded outward, and there they were. 3 massive werewolves, their eyes gleaming with murderous intent. The survivors screamed and scattered. I watched in horror as one of the beasts pounced on a doctor, its jaws closing around his throat. Another leaped an impossible distance, landing on the helicopter's skids as it hovered near the edge of the roof. The aircraft wobbled dangerously, its spotlight swinging wildly. The pilot tried to pull away, but the werewolf's weight was too much. With a sickening lurch, the helicopter tilted and crashed into the side of the building. The explosion lit up the night sky, momentarily blinding me. Heat washed over us and debris rained down. Through the chaos, I saw the nurse who had helped me cornered by one of the werewolves. Without thinking, I grabbed a piece of broken pipe and charged. I swung with all my might, connecting with the creature's head. It stumbled, momentarily stunned. "Run!" I shouted to the nurse, and we both sprinted for the far side of the roof. But where could we go? We were trapped, stories above the ground, with monsters closing in from all sides. As we reached the edge, I looked down at the city below. Sirens wailed in the distance, and fires burned in several locations. Lansing had become a war zone. The nurse clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "What do we do?" she whispered. I turned to face the approaching werewolves, my mind racing. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. There had to be... The werewolves advanced slowly, savoring our fear. I could see the intelligence in their eyes. These weren't mindless beasts, but calculating predators. They knew we had nowhere to go. My mind raced, searching for any possible escape. The roof access door was blocked, the helicopter was destroyed, and we were too high up to jump. It seemed hopeless. But then I noticed something. A maintenance ladder on the side of the building, partially hidden by an air conditioning unit. It was a long shot, but it was our only chance. I squeezed the nurse's hand, drawing her attention. With a subtle nod, I indicated the ladder. Her eyes widened in understanding. "When I say go," I whispered, "run for the ladder. Don't look back, no matter what you hear. Understand?" She nodded, her face pale but determined. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. It was insane, probably suicidal, but if it gave her a chance to escape, it would be worth it. "Go!" I shouted, and immediately charged toward the werewolves. The nurse hesitated for a split second before running toward the ladder. The werewolves, caught off guard by my unexpected attack, focused their attention on me. I swung the pipe wildly, managing to catch one of the creatures across the snout. It yelped in pain and anger, backing up a step. The other two snarled, circling me. From the corner of my eye, I saw the nurse reach the ladder and begin her descent. A small surge of relief washed over me. At least she had a chance. But my momentary distraction cost me. One of the werewolves lunged, its claws raking across my back. I cried out in pain, stumbling forward. The pipe clattered from my grasp, rolling away across the roof. I turned to face my attackers, knowing these were likely my final moments. The werewolves closed in, their yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. Just as the largest one tensed to pounce, a new sound cut through the night, the staccato burst of automatic gunfire. The werewolves howled in pain and surprise, wheeling around to face this new threat. A team of heavily armed police officers had emerged onto the roof, their weapons trained on the creatures. The air filled with the deafening sound of gunshots and bestial roars. I took advantage of the chaos to make a run for the ladder. My injuries screamed in protest as I swung myself over the edge of the roof, but adrenaline pushed me forward. The metal rungs were slick with dew, making each step treacherous. I could hear the battle raging above me, punctuated by inhuman howls of pain and rage. I didn't dare look up, focusing solely on my descent. About halfway down, I heard a horrifying sound, claws scraping on metal. One of the werewolves had followed me onto the ladder. Panic gave me renewed strength. I climbed down faster, my hands raw and bleeding from the rough metal. The creature above me snarled, getting closer with each passing second. Just as I felt hot breath on the back of my neck, I reached a window. Without hesitation, I kicked it with all my might. The glass shattered, and I tumbled through the opening, landing hard on the floor inside. I scrambled to my feet, finding myself in an empty hospital room. The werewolf's massive paw appeared at the window, its claws gouging deep furrows in the wall as it tried to squeeze through. I ran for the door, bursting out into the hallway. The floor was eerily quiet compared to the chaos I had left earlier. Had the other werewolves been driven off, or were they still hunting somewhere in the building's labyrinthine corridors? I made my way to the emergency stairwell, my senses on high alert for any sign of danger. As I descended, I could hear distant sounds of conflict, shouted orders, sporadic gunfire, and the occasional inhuman roar. When I finally reached the ground floor, I was met with a scene of controlled chaos. SWAT teams were moving through the lobby, securing the area. Injured survivors were being treated by paramedics, while shell-shocked staff and patients huddled in groups, comforting each other. I stumbled toward the exit, my adrenaline finally wearing off. The pain from my various injuries hit me all at once, nearly bringing me to my knees. A paramedic rushed to my side, supporting me as I swayed on my feet. "Sir, are you all right? Were you bitten?" The question sent a chill through me. In all the chaos, I hadn't even considered the implications of my wounds. What if the werewolf's claws had done more than just physical damage? What if I was infected? Before I could answer, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. A group of officers were escorting someone, or something, into the building. As they passed, I caught a glimpse of their prisoner. It was a man, naked and covered in blood. But what struck me were his eyes, yellow and feral, filled with a mixture of rage and fear. He snapped and snarled at his captors, his movements more animal than human. One of the officers noticed my stare. "Another one," he said grimly. "We've captured 3 so far. They seem to revert to human form when seriously injured. We're taking them to a secure location for study." The implications of his words hit me like a physical blow. These werewolves weren't just monsters. They were people. People who, like their victims, had lives and families. How long had this been going on? How many others were out there, hiding their terrible secret? As the paramedic led me to an ambulance, my mind reeled with questions. What had triggered this outbreak? Was it limited to Lansing, or were there other cities facing the same terror? And most pressingly, was I now carrying the curse within me? The doors of the ambulance closed, and we pulled away from the hospital. Through the back window, I could see the first hints of dawn breaking over the city. Lansing had survived the night, but at what cost? As we drove through the streets, I saw the aftermath of the werewolves' rampage. Smashed cars, broken windows, and the occasional dark stain on the pavement that I tried not to think too hard about. Police and emergency vehicles clogged the roads, their lights painting everything in surreal shades of red and blue. We passed by the state capitol building, its majestic dome now a stark silhouette against the lightning sky. I wondered how the governor and other officials were handling this crisis. How do you even begin to explain something like this to the public? The ambulance radio crackled to life, and I caught snippets of reports coming in from around the city. Multiple attack sites, dozens of casualties, unconfirmed sightings of large animals fleeing into the surrounding forests. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As we arrived at another hospital, this one hopefully werewolf-free, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life and the lives of everyone in Lansing had been irrevocably changed. The world had shifted on its axis, revealing a darker, more terrifying reality beneath the surface. The paramedics wheeled me into the emergency room, which was already crowded with other survivors from the night's events. As doctors swarmed around me, checking my vitals and examining my wounds, I found myself watching the windows warily. Even here, in the bright lights of the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. A nurse approached with a clipboard, asking me routine questions: name, age, medical history. But when she got to the last item, her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Sir, I need to ask, were you bitten or scratched by one of the creatures?" I hesitated, the memory of claws raking across my back still fresh in my mind. I'm not sure, I admitted. It all happened so fast. She nodded grimly, making a note on the chart. "We'll need to keep you under observation for the next 24 hours just to be safe. Try to rest now. A doctor will be with you shortly to discuss treatment options." As she walked away, the full weight of my situation crashed down upon me. I wasn't just a survivor of a terrifying attack. I was potentially a carrier of whatever had caused this outbreak. My very presence could be putting everyone around me in danger. I closed my eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking me. But even in sleep, I found no peace. My dreams were filled with snarling beasts, glowing yellow eyes, and the sound of my own voice raised in an inhuman howl. When I awoke, the hospital room was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. For a moment, I could almost believe that the events of the previous night had been nothing more than a terrible nightmare. But the pain in my body and the sterile smell of the hospital quickly dispelled that comforting illusion. A television mounted on the wall was tuned to a local news channel. The anchor, looking haggard and shell-shocked, was reading a statement from the governor. Words like quarantine, state of emergency, and military assistance jumped out at me. This was real. It was all real. A knock at the door drew my attention. A doctor entered, accompanied by 2 stern-looking men in dark suits. My heart sank. I knew instinctively that whatever they had to say, it wasn't going to be good news. "Mr. Edward," the doctor began, her voice carefully neutral. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I replied honestly. "What's going on? Has there been any progress in understanding what happened last night?" The doctor exchanged a glance with the suited men before continuing. We're still in the early stages of our investigation, but we've learned a few things. The condition appears to be spread through bodily fluids, saliva, blood, even sweat in some cases. Those who are infected undergo a transformation during periods of heightened stress or emotion, particularly under the light of the full moon. I felt a chill run down my spine. And am I? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Preliminary blood tests show markers consistent with the infection. I'm so sorry, Mr. Edward. The room seemed to spin around me. I was infected. I was going to become one of those things. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. One of the suited men stepped forward. Mr. Edward, I'm Agent Thompson with the CDC. Given the nature of this outbreak, we're establishing a secure facility to house and study those affected by the condition. It's for your own safety, as well as the safety of the general public. You mean a prison, I said bitterly. A research center, Agent Thompson corrected, though his tone held little warmth. We're dealing with an unprecedented situation here, sir. Our priority has to be containing the spread and finding a cure. Your cooperation would be greatly appreciated. I wanted to argue to fight against the unfairness of it all, but deep down I knew they were right. I had seen firsthand the devastation these creatures, these werewolves, could cause. If there was even a chance I could turn into one of them, I was a danger to everyone around me. What about my family? I asked, thinking of my wife and children. Can I at least say goodbye? Agent Thompson's expression softened slightly. We'll arrange a supervised visit once you're settled in the facility. For now, it's best if you minimize contact with uninfected individuals. As they prepared to transfer me, I found myself staring out the window at the city I had called home for so many years. Lansing looked different now, darker, more dangerous. The streets were eerily empty, with military vehicles patrolling instead of the usual traffic. I thought about all the people whose lives had been forever altered by last night's events. The survivors dealing with trauma and loss, the families of those who didn't make it, and those like me, cursed with a condition we didn't understand and couldn't control. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I felt a stirring deep within me, something wild and primal, clawing at the edges of my consciousness. I clenched my fists, fighting against the urge to change. This was my new reality. The night that had started with a simple late night at the office had become the dividing line between my old life and whatever lay ahead. The Werewolf of Lansing wasn't just a monster stalking the streets, it was now a part of me. As they wheeled me out of the hospital room, I silently vowed to fight this curse with everything I had. For my family, for my city, and for the hope that someday we might find a way to reclaim our humanity from the beast within. The story of that terrifying night in Lansing was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning of a much larger, darker tale. One that would reshape not just my life, but the very fabric of our society. The werewolves had emerged from the shadows, and the world would never be the same.